Sure. So as Taryn just mentioned, sort of there's a huge lack of clarity around the Sufis in particular their founding figure. The founding figure seems to vary depending on the historian. And I've heard some scholars like Loewenstein has sort of posited that the Sufri label was back projected by hagiographers to sort of accommodate quietist Hawarij groups who could not be sort of readily classified as Ibadi. So it was essentially sort of almost a sort of catch-all miscellaneous category for quietists. And I wanted to ask if you agreed with that theory at all.
I think Loewenstein makes a good case. The Ṣufrī label certainly seems to be difficult to get a handle on. You have very, very different people and groups who are sort of lumped in that category. So it does seem to be a bit of a hold-all container, kind of like a label for people that you don't really know what else to do with. The quietist label is interesting because, of course, we get a lot of people, like, for instance, the Kharijite rebels in the Jazeera in the 690s, who are also labeled Ṣufrī, and they are certainly not quietists. It's really difficult to say. I mean, as you know, I'm skeptical regarding the whole, Tafarruq narrative anyway. And as you very correctly say, there's a lot of confusion over who is actually involved. So sometimes one of the groups is swapped out for the Bayhasiya, for instance. Different founders are named. I think Loewenstein for the Ṣufrīya has, I mean, he has me convinced. I think he personally, I think he made a good case for suggesting that the Ṣufrīs, at least at this early stage and in the East, weren't really a coherent group. They weren't really a coherent faction with recognizable ideas. It's a little bit different later on in the 8th and 9th century in North Africa, for instance, because there we do seem to have both Ibadis and Ṣufrīs, and actually recognizable groups of Ṣufrīs. Interestingly, here as well, this is something that I think Wilkinson talked about. Ibadis and Ṣufrīs seem to have recruited from different North African tribes. So we have a distinction here as well, not just on whatever the ideological grounds may have been, but also on actual concrete tribal grounds. And that is also something we see in the East. So the Ibadis mostly recruited from southern Arab tribes, whereas Khārijites we usually find among northern Arab tribes. This is one of the avenues that I mentioned earlier, where I think a lot of very, very fruitful work can be done. Just taking a much closer look at the tribal and or ethnic, familial, and so on backgrounds of these revolts, to the extent that the sources let us, but often they let us to a surprising extent.
Yeah, I was actually surprised.